Emmett Till case, brutal murder of a 14-year-old child just by whistling a white woman. In 1955, the horrific murder of a 14-year-old African-American boy named Emmett Till shocked the nation and became a symbol of the deep-seated racism and violence that plagued America during the era of Jim Crow segregation. Till's alleged crime? Whistling at a white woman. The brutal and senseless killing of this young boy ignited a spark in the civil rights movement and forever changed the course of history. In this video, we will explore the details of this tragic case and its lasting impact on the fight for racial equality in America. Welcome to AF Crime, the channel that brings you fascinating crimes all around the world. If you're interested in this kind of content, then this channel is for you. Make sure to like this video, click on the subscribe button, and turn on the notification bell to keep you updated on our recent uploads. Now, let's get right into the video and witness how Emmett Till became the icon for civil rights movement in 1950. Emmett Louis Till was born on July 25, 1941 in Chicago, Illinois. He was raised by his mother, Mamie Carthen, and his father, Louis Till. His mother was born and raised up until she was 2 in the small Delta town of Webb, Mississippi. Back when Emmett's mother was 2 years old, her family moved to Argo, Illinois, near Chicago, to escape from the unequal treatment, violence, and lack of opportunity for black people under the law. They were mostly sharecroppers who lived on land owned by white people. Back then, black people were excluded from voting, and economic rights and opportunities were almost existent. In 1942, Emmett's parents were separated after Emmett's mother discovered that her husband had been unfaithful. He then physically assaulted Mamie Carthen by choking her to the point that she became unconscious. 3 years later, just a few weeks before Emmett's birthday, Louis Till was court-martialed and executed in Italy for the accused murder of an Italian woman and the rape of 2 others. Emmett and his mother go on with their lives and moved on to Detroit. Eventually, Mamie Carthen met and married a man named Hank Bradley in 1952. After some time living in Detroit, Emmett preferred living in Chicago, so he returned there to live with his grandmother. Later that year, his mother and stepfather rejoined him too. His mother began working as a civilian clerk for the U.S. Air Force with a better salary. Emmett had heard all the fantastic stories living in Mississippi Delta by his uncle and his grandmother. Emmett, being a curious boy, wanted to see it for himself, so he decided to take a visit. His mother warned him about the rules for black people. She cautioned him that Chicago and Mississippi were 2 different worlds, and that he should properly behave in front of the white people in the South. Because you see, back in the late 1890s and early of 1920s, lynching had been a common practice where white Southerners would kill African Americans and get away with it. They would even take a photo with the African American they lynched and bragged as a symbol for dominance over black people. Fast forward to August 21st, 1955. Emmett Till arrived at the home of his Uncle Mose and his wife Elizabeth Wright in the town of Money, Mississippi. Emmett and his cousins decided to visit a local store to buy some candy. Little did they know that this store would be the cause of the tragedy. Bryant's Grocery and Meat Market was the name of the store, and owned by a white couple, Roy Bryant and Carolyn Bryant. At the time when Emmett and his cousins are at the store, there were black people playing checkers outside the market, and Carolyn was alone in front of the store. It was reported that Roy Bryant was on a trip hauling shrimp to Texas. The fact that happened in these times were heavily disputed many times in the report of a journalist named William Bradford Huey. Emmett Till showed a photograph of a white girl outside the store and claimed that he had a white girlfriend, according to the journalist. The local boys then dared Emmett to speak to Carolyn Bryant. However, Till's cousin, Simeon Wright, who was present at the time, disputed the claims of Huey, saying that Emmett did not have any photograph of a white girl and nobody dared him to flirt or speak to Carolyn Bryant. According to Simeon Wright and Wheeler Parker, which are the cousins of Emmett who went with him at the time, Emmett Till went inside the store to buy some candy and whistled at Carolyn. They said that the whistles scared them to death because in Mississippi, nobody dared to flirt with a white woman. Nobody dared to even touch or talk to a white woman. However, according to his mother, Emmett has a speech impediment. When he contracted polio at the age of 6, he had a hard time pronouncing the letter B, and she taught him to whistle to himself to alleviate his stuttering. His mother claimed that maybe her son may have whistled to overcome problems asking for a bubble gum. Other sources claim that Emmett did not whistle directly at Carolyn Bryant, but to the local boys who were playing checkers. Roy Bryant came home on August 27th and was informed of what had happened. He then questioned every black man who would enter the store, and somehow he learned that the boy who allegedly whistled at his wife was from Chicago and was staying at Mose Wright's house. Well, it's a small town, and everybody knew each other, so at the early morning of August 28, 1955, between 2 and 3:30 a.m., Roy Bryant and his half-brother John William Milam went to Mose Wright's house. The two were armed with a pistol and a flashlight. They aggressively went inside the house and asked for the niggers who did the talking. Emmett's aunt offered them money, but the men refused. The two men said to Mr. Wright that if he would tell anyone about it, he wouldn't live to see the next day. Emmett's uncle and aunt were hesitant to call the police, afraid for their life, because they knew no matter what the circumstances are, the police and the government would not side with them. The two men pulled Emmett to the car and asked Carolyn if he was the boy, which she then said yes. Roy Bryant and his half-brother tied up Emmett in the back of a green pickup truck. They recruited 2 black men and drove to a barn in Drew. According to the witnesses, they saw the truck passing by, seeing 2 white men in the front seat and 2 black men at the back. Emmett Till was heavily beaten, tortured, and lynched. A witness named Willie Reed stated that while walking home, he heard the beating and crying from the barn. Other passerbys heard the yelling, but due to the state of white supremacy, they wouldn't do anything. After they beat and tortured Emmett to death, they then drove to Tallahatchie River, where they tossed him over, shot him one last time, and weighted his body with a 32-kilogram fan. Emmett's uncle tried to find him that day, but was unsuccessful. After he returned home at 8 a.m., despite the fear for his life and for his family, he called the LaFleur County Sheriff and another for Emmett's mother to explain what had happened. After the county sheriff received the call, they questioned the 2 brothers, Bryant and Milam. They admitted that they did take Emmett from his uncle, but they claimed that they had released him the same night in front of Bryant's store. 3 days later, after the incident and murder, a boy named Robert Hodges, who was fishing in the Tallahatchie River, saw a foot sticking out of the water. Emmett Till's badly mutilated head and disfigured body was pulled from the river and loaded into a boat. He had been shot above the right ear. Some witnesses claim that they could even see light from the other side of the hole of the bullet. His eye was dislodged from the socket, and there were barbed wire fasteners around his neck. He had no shirt on and was severely unrecognizable. They confirmed it was Emmett because of the ring he wore with the initial of LT, and May 25th, 1943, carved in it, which was given to him by his biological father. The body of the young boy was returned to Chicago, where his mother insisted on a public funeral service with an open casket, which was held at Robert's Temple Church of God in Christ. Thousands of people attended his funeral, and photos of his mutilated body were published in every black-oriented magazine and newspaper. The photo of Mamie Marthan Bradley looking at her mutilated son's body had become an eye-opener for many people across the nation. How cruel the white with the ideal of white supremacy. The trial was held in the courthouse of Sumner on September 19, 1955, in the western seat of Tallahatchie County, with an all-white, all-male jury. It was known as the first great media event of the civil rights movement. It was filled with 280 spectators. Even in the courtroom, racism still occurred. The seats of the white people were segregated from the seats of the black people. You could feel the presence of informality in the courtroom. The jury members were even allowed to drink beer on duty. and many white male spectators wore handguns. Perhaps the most interesting and courageous event in this trial was when Mr. Wright testified against the white men. It has been the very first time a black man had testified to the guilt of a white man in the court and lived. And from the witness stand, Wright pointed and identified the man who kidnapped Emmett Till. Another surprising witness was Willie Reed, testified that after he witnessed Milam, Bryant, and several other men park a green pickup on Milam's barn, he heard licks and hollering from within the barn. Despite the witnesses, the chance of winning of Till's case was not even close to 1%. It is safe to say that almost no one, not even the prosecution witnesses, neither the jurors, really believed that the body pulled from the river was of Emmett. The jurors even enjoyed their drinks before returning 68 minutes later to the courtroom to announce their verdict of not guilty, and both men were released from custody. The two men were protected against double jeopardy. The two men would go on and publicly admitted in 1956 interview with Look magazine that they had tortured and murdered the boy, selling the story of how they did it for $4,000. After the verdict of the jury, many people who provoked were mad by the decision, and this sparks for the editorials to call for federal legislation to protect the civil rights of Black Americans. In the South, the verdict seemed to spell the end of the system of nobleness oblige, and this marked as the real beginning of the civil rights movement. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP, asked Emmett Till's mother to tour the country relating the events of her son's life, death, and the trial of his murderers. It was one of the most successful fundraising campaigns the NAACP had ever conducted. Although none of the other men who participated in the kidnapping, beating, and murder of Emmett Till ever faced charges and lived as free men until they died out of an unknown cancer, the death of Emmett Till will never be forgotten, as he became an icon for the upsurge of activism and resistance that became known as the civil rights movement. The discrimination may have lessened throughout the year, but in some cases, racially motivated murders still happen. Let's stop the hate and cut the norms of being a racist. We may have been born in different colors, but still, we lived in the same planet. If you're against racism and agreed that Black lives matter, take an action by liking and commenting below. AF Crime strive to bring you more such cases, so if you are interested, do subscribe to our channel where we bring you multiple videos per week. And don't forget to click on the bell icon to receive notification whenever we publish a new video. Till the next case, and thanks for watching.